poetry.
What happens in Vegas should always stay there. I'm sure if it did, Hull KR wouldn't care. Leeds were on fire, Wigan as well. Did the Hull teams even turn up? It was too hard to tell. Another winner this week is nicknamed The Wire, the Giants and Catalans. They were pretty dire. There's only one team still stuck on nought. Lee and John are back to give you their thoughts. Welcome to the 11th episode of Super League 360, a podcast primarily about the top tier of British Rugby League. My name is Lee Poet Laureate Addison.
And my name is John Davidson. That's another lovely intro, Lee. You set the bar high.
Our mate James Varley sent me one too. He's another one who sent me something 5 minutes before the show. We're expecting it to get in, so I told him where to shove it down. I'm a coach in Australia, John a journo in the UK. Please read the description of this pod or listen to all pods trying to make our introduction shorter, because when we did the old Ashes podcast, that was half the podcast, I think. This podcast is being aired on Ashes Rugby League still. I would like you all to transfer over, though, if you can. But it's definitely on the Rugby League Coach podcast platforms. I don't care if you stay on them, as well as the Rugby League Coach YouTube, if you want to watch it as a visual. So if you subscribe to those, you won't miss a thing. And we're also on rugbyleague.com with Steve Mascord, Jason Costigan and the guys. John, obviously we've just had Vegas. I'll talk about that soon. But the John tweet of the week, the Rugby League tweet of the week, the socials pop at Lee of the week, Johnny's jab, Lee's laugh, media watch, every segment. There's only one winner this week, and that is the fact that you were mistaken identity on X this week. What the hell happened?
Yeah, it's been one of the more bizarre weeks of my life, I would have to say. 44 years of my life. Being mistaken for the Scottish Tourette's campaigner John Davidson, who accidentally said a racial slur on the BAFTAs last Sunday night, and got mistaken on Twitter, and then went viral for a while. It's been a bit of a surreal week. Very hard to kind of put into words.
Give us some numbers. How many days have you had to deal with it? How many impressions or retweets did you get at any point? How many followers?
Well, I have written a piece on Patreon titled "Tagged, Trolled, and Trending My Accidental BAFTA Storm," which is free to read for anyone on Patreon. But I haven't checked the latest numbers. But yeah, it was even today. I've still had a few tweets. Someone tagged me in something that I thought I was that John Davidson. But I've had impressions for some of my tweets for about 2 million, I think. Some of them have ranged 1 million, 2 million, a few different ones. I think I've added about 4,000 followers. I had approaches from media, some potential TV appearance, which didn't happen. Just a bit of a really bizarre week. I mean, it's taught me a few things, but I've just tried to combat it with a bit of humour and a bit of levity. And
what has it taught you, John? Let's be philosophical for a while.
It's taught me that we do live in a world where people like to vent, particularly online. If, say, I didn't know you, Lee, and I came across one of your posts on Facebook, and I know you get this a lot anyway, but, I might just say, oh, well, who's this guy? He's an effing C, blah, blah, blah.
I think you did before we got to know each other.
No, the difference with me, Lee, is I thought it, but I didn't say it. That's,
yeah.
No, but people just love to vent and abuse, and they don't generally think about the consequences. They don't even usually think clearly if they're venting at the right person. But people are just angry about everything these days, and that's one thing I learned. And the other thing I learned is that people then like to go in and abuse that person who is either trolling someone else, particularly if they're doing it wrongly, as in mistaken identity. So I've been attacked by, I would say I've been attacked by some people maybe in the African American community, and then I've been defended by some racists and right-wingers, and then most of the people have just enjoyed the banter and the circus. So I think the common thing that we all have in the world is everyone enjoys a joke. that's one of the things I've learned. I've also learned that we're all a bit mad, and some people don't like to admit when they're wrong. And I will firstly say I'm wrong most of the time, and a lot of the time, so I put my hand up when I am wrong, or I at least try to.
Well, there's allegations that there's Russian interference in elections in England and America. Well, I can promise you there was Australian interference in some of these X's because our podcast numbers have gone through the roof this week, mate. So
Well, I've also had 50 quid's worth of free coffees, buy me a coffee. Thanks to those people. Yeah, I think people kept saying, because I do have a verified account, that hopefully I made some money. I think I made maybe about $50 from Twitter in a week. So look, I'll take that. But yeah,
better than kicking the swingers.
Yeah, I've had a bit of abuse as well. I think one of the tweets where I said, if everyone can calm down, jokingly, I'm going to go and pick up my daughter from school if everyone can calm down. And someone responded, F you and your daughter. And that was a bit like, okay, you can aim it at me. You don't need to aim it at my daughter, my 10-year-old daughter. But,
no.
As I explained in my piece, I've caught lots, and I know you have too, Lee. I've caught lots of abuse, and sometimes bullying, intimidation, legal threats. You get used to it, so that's probably given me a thicker skin than the average Joe. So you try and deal with it with a bit.
X seems a bit worse than Facebook, and my company is bigger on Facebook as a rule. And I don't think X is quite as big in Australia, so I think X has taken me longer to have any kind of real presence on there, and I'm trying really. Whereas in England it's a cesspit, and in America it's a cesspit. In
my experience, I think I joined X or Twitter in 2010, but whenever Musk took over 3, 4, 5, whatever it's gone a lot worse, because one of the things he did when he started, he sacked 70-80% of the workplace. So a lot of the people who were like regulating comments, racial slurs and things like that, are just gone. So it's much more of a cesspit than it ever was in my experience.
At least it got us some new listeners and some new followers and $50.
I had my 5 minutes of fame. It's gone
right.
now, and I was in the Times on Saturday. So yeah,
give your contact details for nice tweets.
Well, the people who are coming actually for rugby league and not for Tourette's banter or Simpson memes, it is Johnny D. Davidson at Johnny D. Davidson, and on Facebook at John Davidson Journalist, and on Patreon at rugbyleaguehub.com long reads.
And on that note, you've had some people contact you and tag me in on X with some questions, and we'll get
some
through
really good questions.
Yeah, Phil Gilbert, and this could take us in any direction, so stay tuned for Vegas and all the updates on the news and the match reviews. Phil Gilbert, or should I say at Zippy Archie, said, despite all games now live on TV, it feels like as a match-going fan, I am not getting any benefit. Games played at the same time, many behind the red button, so can't be recorded, and poor production values, no clock, no scoreboard. Is it time that the RFL push back against Sky?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question. I think there's a number of ways to answer that. As a match-going fan, look, I don't know what team Phil supports. I mean, I imagine he's probably going to see his team maybe every week home and away. He's not going to other games. But I think the idea of TV coverage, and I think you get this more in America and Australia, and you'd probably agree, Lee, that England's a bit different. The TV audience is definitely a different market from the in-stadium audience. Mm-hmm. Like, the in-stadium audience, the TV audience for, say, Wigan and St Helens is for people in London or in, Scotland or whatever. It's for people who can't get to the game. It's to broadcast that to people who aren't going to go, and it's to make money. It's to provide ratings for the competition. Now, I see what he's saying about the production values, because they aren't great when the coverage starts 10 minutes before and it's just two commentators and there's no halftime show. And when you compare it to a main event or to Fox League, it doesn't look great. But I guess we've got to weigh up the fact that you can watch every game when you can only watch 2 or 3 previously out of a 6-game round. What's better? Yeah. I mean, that's preference, isn't it?
Yeah. I also don't think beggars can be choosers. And
well, that's a big point, yeah.
and there's been one big broadcaster willing to cover our sport for the last 30 years very regularly. And whether they've increased or decreased the money, they're still covering our sport. And I don't know if there are people queuing up at the moment to take over from them. So I just don't think kicking them into touch is an option. And I think the key, just to add to that, I believe that Brian Carney is often the mouthpiece for the Sky TV crew. So whatever he says or hints at is probably what some of the people who want the future of rugby league on Sky and have that in mind about what it looks like. I think Brian's possibly a mouthpiece for those, and John Wilkin as well.
Yeah, I don't necessarily agree with that, knowing Brian fairly well. I think Brian has got strong opinions of his own, and
of course, yeah,
and on John Wilkin does. But Sky as a whole, look, a lot of rugby league fans in England seem to think that Sky is like a charity. It is a business, and their business is to make money. Now, the reason they put billions or whatever, however much they put into Premier League football, is because it makes them money. Now, obviously, they've done their numbers and their figures, and you are right, Lee, there's not a huge amount of other broadcasters who are willing to put big money into rugby league in the UK. That's just a fact. Like, I think DAZN were interested in the last of it, but they offered less than what Sky offered. So the only way we really push that TV deal is we become more popular. We get more participants, we get more full stadiums, we get better ratings, and we entice another broadcaster. Now, there's a lot of people who want to kick Sky into touch, but there is no other alternative at this point in time. That's the reality. A lot of people don't want to agree with that, or they don't want to admit it, but the sport is not nationally popular enough. And I think just though there's been, great games and some great metrics in the first couple of rounds, the only main event game, I think, has been the Vegas game. But in most of the Thursday, Friday night games, darts, football, but even darts has been on the main event channel, and Super Leagues. And previously, in the last couple of years, Super League's actually been on that main event channel. So it just goes to show darts has sort of come from nowhere and is really popular in the UK now. And women's football is another thing that 10, 15 years ago wasn't on the radar.
And Sky would put it on main event if they thought it was going to get the eyeballs. So
that's the reality, Lee. That is the reality. I mean, we have to work on ourselves to make ourselves more popular and nationally relevant. And Vegas is something that can help do that, and I think has helped do that in some ways.
Simon Paul at Paul Beck 222-80558 says, discuss the pros and cons of the NRL buying a stake in SL Super League. Also, other than a great piss up, how does Las Vegas really grow the sport? If we are trying to grow it in the US, there's better areas to have the match. And Ben Blackwell at Ben M. Blackwell on the back of that said, following on from Simon's question, what is the actual reality of the old guard accepting NRL involvement? What guarantees need to be given for existing clubs in Super League to remain in the comp? So I suppose a two-tier question there. NRL taking over Super League and the Vegas experiment.
I mean, that's literally a podcast on its own.
True.
we could discuss that. Look, I'll try and condense what my thoughts are, and you chime in with yours, or any disagreement. But I think personally, I think the NRL partnership takeover, when you call it, is the way to go for Super League. I think me and you are probably of the few people who've lived and worked in both competitions, or at least experienced it, to kind of know where things could work. The NRL has got a lot more money, a lot more resource. It's also got very good expertise in marketing rugby league and things that work, while Super League doesn't. And I think there could be huge benefits in knowledge sharing, in feeder relationships with clubs, swapping players, junior players or senior players going either way. Coach, you'd be a big fan of this. I mean, coach education.
Referees.
Judges. And also coming in-house together, we would have Ashes regularly, we'd have more internationals, we'd have probably State of Origin in Wembley. We'd probably have an NRL. We may already have an NRL round in London not too long, but I think there are many cross-code benefit or cross-competition benefits. And I think Brian Carney said this. He said, we need to work together to grow as a sport because we are a small sport. We need to leverage off each other, and I think both parties could benefit from that. That's my honest opinion.
Well, I'll just bring it into one of the news items we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about that Brian Carney interview with Peter V'landys. Now, First of all, V'landys had a great haircut. His barnet is looking fantastic.
Well, I just want to add to that. I saw him at the flesh at the Ashes. I think it was the second test coming out, and when you see it up close, there's some work going on that.
So he had it back then as well.
Well, I think he's had a fresh done. I don't think he's had a fresh done for Vegas, but you could tell there's And look, we're making light of this. Look,
Oh yeah.
Doesn't really matter what he looks like. It's more what he gets.
Look, honestly, the man I think is the best administrator rugby league's had since the Arthurson days, basically. So, and don't get me wrong, I think any administrator, there's always going to be things that you want them to do better. But I think on the whole, he gets a massive pass mark. So
I don't agree with everything he says or does, but he's had massive successes, and I agree with the best since Arthurson and John Quayle, without a doubt.
Yeah. So all this is done with jest. So that interview was quite an in-depth one with Brian Carney, and this is what I was suggesting about Brian being a bit of a mouthpiece. So when he says things like rugby league in England needs a massive cash injection, I know that is possibly a fact, but it also could be Sky thinking we're going to give them even less at the moment, or we're going to give them nothing because the sport's withering on the vine. So, but there were some interesting things in that, wasn't there? You got some real good access to V'landys. What did you take from that? Because I think this still answers the question from the two boys that we've just asked.
I think there was lots of interesting points in there. I think, as we all know, the negotiations are done behind closed doors, and what's said publicly is often very different. I've been contacting a few people. I haven't sort of been able to say anything up, so I don't know where things stand, but I don't know if the appetite from the UK side is there to give the NRL control, because it is the clubs who run the show in England, and I think the original idea was a 10-team competition, which was unpalatable to a lot of them, and there is still massive divisions amongst the Super League game, with sort of Wigan on one side, and then you've got your...
So that answers in part Ben's question. What is the actual reality of the old guard accepting it, basically? Yeah.
Well, look, I mean, part of one of the news items is obviously the nomination for Nigel Wood as chair. Now, look, was anyone surprised when that happened? No, because we all know how things work, and also most of the committee that nominated him was people that he started the strategic review committee. So, look, he's just come back, or he's come back a year and a bit ago. Is he going to give up power? I mean, that would seem very unlikely that Nigel would do that. And obviously, he's got a lot of support. And I think it's kind of, we can use the analogy of turkeys voting for Christmas. So if you're a club and you would probably be outside of the NRL's want or need in a competition, are you going to vote for that? Probably not. That's how I see it.
Richard King also asked on Facebook, after the Vegas weekend, it's clear to see the two hemisphere competitions can coexist together perfectly. With that in mind, and V'landys looking successful in his Super League investment, and so I don't know if he's got some intel there, would you both see it beneficial further to pair a Super League and NRL club together to share ideas, progression methods, and potentially develop younger players?
Well, there's a few clubs already doing that. Look, I don't know how much they share, but I know York signed an agreement with Penrith. I think Manly signed one with Cass not long ago, but they're not sort of sister relationships in that, say, the Brisbane Broncos used to own the London Broncos. They're not like that, but they could be in the future. I mean, I think it was a few years ago. You remember when Harry Grant was just coming through and Melbourne loaned him to West Tigers?
Yeah.
I remember because Harry Grant's manager, I think, said this publicly. They wanted to loan him to a Super League club. They wanted to send him to Super League for a
Yeah.
year, get
Yeah.
him games in him, and then bring him back. How good would that be if
Yeah.
the next generation of NRL great superstars had, at 18, 19, 20, whatever, had a year in Super League?
Absolutely.
They were playing for Cass or they were playing for Wakefield, and then they went back.
And many of them would qualify for England as well, and they'd still be able to play Origin.
Yeah,
because of the changes to the rules.
I think the fact that if we had the two competitions join up, we'd have a World Cup challenge in the calendar every year. We'd have more regular test matches. We'd have so many, we would have a global TV deal, which would mean more money for Super League. There's lots of things. I think one thing we won't have, and I know this keeps getting mentioned by some people in Australia, we won't have a return to winter for Super League.
Somebody else asked that question. Yeah, so that wipes out another question.
You tell me, Lee. You're the Englishman, and you grew up. Yeah. You would have seen both because you're old enough to have. You probably played, or you would have played your amateur in the winter days. And
Mark Clifton asked the question about that, by the way. So
yeah, you would have been on terraces in November.
But I also played in it. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think the move from summer was because Sky said here's whatever it was, 80 million quid?
Yeah.
It completely changed the game. There was one professional club and then suddenly there was a ton of them. Do you think a move back to summer would work or be smart?
All I'll say is I wouldn't rule it out completely because...
I would, but okay.
Because, and I'd love you to tell me why when I've finished, but this isn't 1996 anymore. And the quality of grounds tend to be better. The facilities are better, apart from Odsal, I think. But we'll...
You'll be banned in Bradford.
I know. The facilities are better as a rule. The technology around turning around fields and stadia after and processes after a game are 30 years better than they were.
Wigan Athletic fans would disagree with you on that, but yep, keep going.
Right. I just don't. I don't think a massive "we're not doing it" should be done yet because, I mean, I know the governing bodies like to put spin on attendance figures and this, that, and the other, but if you actually look at the history of attendances and whatnot, the attendances aren't that much different to when we played in the winter anyway. Look, I don't think we should, but I would certainly never take it off the table because, and then there's also we could even consider a little bit of A-League thought process here. Who says you have to have a winter sport or a summer sport? Why can't you go across the two? Because I tell you why, John. Super League has had a clear run for the last 4 weeks of rugby league-minded people all around the world. People who were mad rugby league fans were what have been consuming Super League. Okay? And also, it gives us opportunities to have things like Vegas and the World Club Challenge. Because they don't impact the season as much when they're out of the NRL season. So I just wouldn't rule it out. That's all. I'm not saying we should go back to winter. I'm just saying I would not rule it out. I'd keep it on the table.
I'd agree. It wouldn't be ruled out unless there was a massive cash incentive. So, if there was a TV deal that said, look, you'll get, I don't know, $1 million more per club or 20 million more total. And obviously it would be considered. But I don't think that would happen. And I think if you look at the move, so, I mean, you are right. The Super League season at the moment goes from February to October. So it's not like it's purely in the summer anyway. No. But if it did change, I don't know, from
November to
August. I suppose it'd be October to, I don't know, April or whatever it was previously. It would be exactly competitive with football, and it would also compete with rugby union. And the weather, Australian people don't understand how bad the weather is in England. You essentially have kind of 3 seasons in a Super League season anyway. Like the weather at the moment, it's rained every day. It's terrible. And it's not nice going to games. But then in the summer, it's quite nice. Usually, there's lots of nice weather, and then it gets to rainy again when we get to grand final time. So I think that would be a put off. No, it would also be a put off for broadcasters because I think while there are obviously competition in summer, there's cricket and there's other things. I think it's Super League's actually a good window for a summer sport in the UK.
Now, the other consideration is the community game, because the community game has mostly gone over to summer now, but they often have to have 6 weeks off in the summer.
Yeah, because people go on holidays. I get
because
that.
people go on holiday, which almost defies the point of moving to summer, if you ask me, if you have 6 weeks off in the middle. And that obviously, so there's so many pros and cons. Again, that's probably another podcast on its own, John. There's just one more point I want to go on the whole potential NRL investment. And this is why our questions are so good. To Ben's point, what guarantees need to be given over existing clubs in Super League remaining in the competition? I think Volandis, or the Volandis administration, tends to leak things to the media to get the public's opinion on them.
Yeah, without a doubt, they do.
And one of the leaks was well, there was a few. There was whether Manchester Roosters were going to happen, but there was another one that there was going to be a 10-team Super League. And I might be wrong. I think it came out of Volandis' mouth at one point. And straight away, you're going to have fans of a few clubs who are going to get twitchy. Now, Nigel Wood and his gang have instead extended the Super League to 14, so there's probably a clash of philosophies there, isn't there?
Definitely, yeah, without a doubt. And I think the NRL idea was a 10-team competition with a London and 2 teams in France, because they see France as quite strategic. They see London as quite strategic. Now, I think a lot of those older traditional clubs, aren't that bothered about London or France, and they see France as a bit of a, well, they don't bring any away fans, so it costs us money, blah, 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 blah. So there is a clash of ideologies there. And there's been, rumours or reports of potential investment in Super League from the Middle East, America. Personally, I've never heard that. I've sort of questioned the validity of that. I think it's pie in the sky, but look, I may be proved wrong. I think we can all agree that English Rugby League, not just Super League, needs a capital investment. It needs cash. It needs more money. And it is quite hamstrung by that. We did miss a point in one of those questions, which was about Vegas and why are they targeting Vegas and not other places in America. I was in Vegas last year. I'd been to Vegas twice before that. It was quite amazing just to see the city kind of taken over by rugby league. It's quite of a surreal moment. Walk along the strip and you see a guy people with a Steeden, and you pull out and he's passing you a Steeden across the strip and you're passing it back. It's like pinch me moments, but it's an amazing trip. Like, I know, and I saw your post on Facebook there, and I agree with this. Originally, the plan was that we're going to take over America. I think that's all bollocks. I think it is a fantastic publicity move to energize the NRL market, the Australian market, to grab all oxygen out of the AFL and everywhere else. And it gets all the media. Obviously, they pay for all the NRL media and journalists to go over there, but it gets so much coverage, so much buzz that it is, it's a success, and people love going. And there's been a lot of parochialism from the English market and the English media about, they need Super League, the NRL. Look, I think we can debate that. But the thing is, there was 4,000 to 5,000 English fans who went to the NRL in Vegas the first year when there was no English involvement. So, as you know, Lee, there's a lot of NRL fans who are English who live in England.
That's right.
Yeah, so they're already getting people from England to come when there was no women's game, when there was no Wigan, no Warrington, no Hull Cow, no Leeds. So that's my point. And people will argue this. That's why I'd say if you took State of Origin to Wembley, you would sell it out.
Oh, you go close to, yeah.
No, I think you would. Look, I know rugby union people that I know who are, fans, rugby union fans, but they go, this is Origin. It's amazing. Like, it's an event. It's like the NFL, when it comes to Wembley.
Like Wimbledon or a Formula One or something.
Yeah. It's something special, and they might not all be rugby league fans, but they, it's like, a big heavyweight boxing match. You might not be a boxing diehard who goes and watches, amateur fights every weekend, but you just might want to be a part of something that's quite special. And I think an Origin game at Wembley would be. I think an NRL round would also get a massive crowd in London. So yeah, I think Vegas has just got that cachet. It's got that special glitz and glamour. But I think the funny thing is, I think the third year and you look at the crowd, what they and the crowd figures I think are a little bit questionable. They said they got 500 more than last year, something like that.
Yeah.
I actually think from the UK perspective, it was actually quieter this year than last year because Sky didn't invest in as much money promoting it. I think there was fewer journos who went over, and also the time slot was quite horrible for the UK market.
It was midnight in England, wasn't it?
Yeah, and last year it was, I think, 9 p.m. or 9:30, and the Wigan-Warrington game was the highest-rated Super League game on Sky ever in 30 years.
What I'm trying to do right now is take all the questions, because we've got loads more questions, John. They all came through yesterday. I'm trying to put them into the match roundups and things like that, plus some of our news items, so that this isn't a 7-hour podcast. The first thing I want to talk about, what we'll go through now is sort of match reviews, if you like. We did cover the Lee hammering at the hands of Wigan the other day. One of our news items, though, was some of the things that Derek Beaumont said in the lead up to that. Can you take us through that?
Well, I don't remember the specific words, but he was just basically complaining about the inhumane treatment of Lee fans. And to be honest, the whole statement was embarrassing and pathetic.
Half the Lee fans probably live in Wigan.
Yeah, well, look, I think it's like a toddler throwing his toys out of the pram. The thing is, and we talked about the game. Look, Wigan were magnificent. Lee were diabolical. I think what's come up on social media after, and I think it needs addressing because we talked about the Tessie New situation when it broke. What was it, a month or so ago? But the Lee fans are chanting "Tessie New twats who he wants."
That's not nice.
Yeah, I mean, not nice. Is that? Like, really, like this is what happens though when you don't act on these things and you don't address them. It's really quite disgusting, I think. So it's just another bad look from the League Club. But the fish rots from the head, and what can we expect?
Well, they've got some work to do because they were awful on Thursday, and that's a derby. And there'll be people who were going to work in Lee and Wigan on Friday morning and would have struggled to win the conversation with some Wigan fans because they were awful, absolutely awful.
Let me tell you that I've had people contacting me saying make claims, and they're just rumours at this point about certain staff leaving the club. I think, and I had this rumour a while ago, and I put it to Adrian Lamb, and he straight batted it. But I don't think Adrian Lamb will be at. I think he's the top target for the PNG Chiefs, and I don't think he'll be at Lee for years and years in the future. Well, I wouldn't be surprised if he leaves at the end.
I actually think that there's already a few divisions in Super League already of teams. So I think Wigan, Leeds, Warrington, and Saints have probably shown enough in at least 2 games. So in Saints' case, and in Leeds' case, that they're going to be near the top of the ladder or in the final situations. Well done to Warrington at the moment because there was a bit of pressure on them. We've then got the next group, which is basically the promoted sides, Toulouse, York, and Bradford Bulls, who've all had a couple of wins each.
Yeah.
And then we've got Castleford, Hull FC, Wakefield, and Lee, who were nowhere near where they would have expected they were going to be. And then we've got Huddersfield, Catalans, and Hull KR in the bottom group at the moment, who are going, what the hell is going on here?
At the very bottom.
Yeah, what the hell are we, what's going on? And that's already emerging. And one of the reasons Huddersfield are in that scenario is Castleford 34, Huddersfield 8, which was in the shootout between the two sides who hadn't won a game yet. Ashton Golding scored on his Castleford debut against his former club. It was 16-4 at the break. First win for head coach Ryan Carr. John, Huddersfield's defence is awful. It looks to me like they've not done enough work on it. I went into quite a bit of detail in their defence over the last couple of weeks. Their spacings in defence are too big. Teams are easily just scoring through them. They overslide when they slide. There seems to be a lack of communication when they do slide. I can go into detail on the tackle techniques, where they put the feet, their approach to tackle. I honestly think there's some very basic errors in that side that I don't expect from a Super League side, quite frankly.
Yeah, well, they couldn't hold on the ball on Friday night, and I think Luke Robinson said in his post-match interview that they were rubbish.
That was his
They've
quote,
got
yeah. I thought we were
yeah,
rubbish, plain and simple as that.
yeah. I mean, he was pretty scathing. And look, they've got a huge amount of injuries, but from where they were last week against Wakefield, the game that I was at, and they were very, very competitive, and arguably unlikely to lose that. They were very, very poor. So that's against a desperate Cass team who hadn't won a game. That scoreline is a real concern. And Luke Robinson's been at that club for quite a while now in terms of the job, and things are getting worse, not better. So look, he's got a horrendous injury run, and I know but he wasn't using it as an excuse because they have got still a lot of experience in that team. You look at your Lola Heas, your Burgesses, a number of players that got there. So yeah, just very worrying times for Huddersfield. I can't see how it gets better soon.
Hull FC 16, York Knights 17, the newly promoted, winning their second game by the hair of their chinny chin chin. Hull FC is another team that will be thinking, what's going on here? Their edge defense is real. Their edge defense is really poor at the moment, and they seem to lack some pace across the side. Two tries from David Nofaluma, the journeyman, who's now signed for York on his debut for them, and it was 16-10 before Richardson dropped an extra point for York, and what a smart decision that was. And to compound Hull FC's issues, Liam Knight is going back to Australia. He played on Friday, thought he was wholehearted, and now he's going back home.
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting one because I think the Mole had written that his management's looking for another club in Super League. So I don't know. I have no idea what's going on there. I mean, the compassionate Australian grounds, whether he goes back to Australia, whether But look, I think Liam Knight's had 4 or 5 clubs before. I think you can see generally with these signings that Super League clubs make that their recruitment sometimes is very shoddy.
And this is the problem. This is the problem when we all talk about, all we have to do is send players over to England or coach over to England. It's not for some people. Apparently, Wally Lewis, when he turned up at Wakefield in the 80s, looked at the pitch and said, I'm not playing on that, for example. Some people fall in love with it. Others really struggle with the differences, and vice versa. A lot of English people struggle in Australia.
Oh, 100%. But I think when they were giving him 10 grand a game or whatever it was, he managed to suck it up. But they did get relegated and go bust after that. So
yeah, Wakefield fans don't have a great memory of Wally Lewis, actually.
No, he still comes. He was over at Christmas. He does his speaking and that. They get him over. Yeah, he can't beat all. But no, you are right, Lee. I just think like Liam Knight's gone through a lot of clubs. I don't think he was the right signing for Hull FC at the time, and. Yeah, but you are right. Like that's a real embarrassing defeat for Hull. But the flip side is that, like York, how good are they going? Like they've beaten the 2 Hull clubs. It was quite. I was watching the other game and only switched it over to see the last 10 to 15 minutes. It was quite an entertaining end. It wasn't a great look to see Cade Cuss go down, try and basically dive to get a penalty at the front, but good work by the refs and the video ref not to fall for it, and I think York deserved to win that game, so good on them.
I think the issue with Hull FC is that they were abject against Wigan the week before, and you always think you're going to get a response.
Yeah,
and unfortunately, that wasn't a response. Like I said, they just look a little bit slow to me in some places, and both edges are leaking like a sieve. York, same things I'd say about them. I've not changed my view on them. I mean, the 2 wins they have got on the board, they literally have won by a point. And if the wind blows in a different direction, they've not won those games. So
yeah, you've got to remember that they've got half the central distribution.
Yeah. I'm not criticising. I'm just saying and it's still tough. Yeah,
definitely. And I think their salary cap is so much lower, but I think you credit Mark Applegath for getting every ounce of effort and energy and enthusiasm, and they're scrapping, aren't they? And it's good to see.
Warrington 27, Wakefield 16. I actually think this was the highest quality game of the round. I thought it was two teams going pretty much toe-to-toe, and it was a really good game, actually, and it was a well-fought win for Warrington, Sam Burgess's team.
Yeah. Warrington I think, had a relatively comfortable lead, and then Wakefield came really roaring back into it and could have stolen it. It was quite entertaining. I think, look, great signs that Warrington has shown some real heart, some real ticker. They've obviously had a bye round 2 with the World Club Challenge, so 2 wins from 2. And Wakefield will be disappointed that they didn't get some of that game. I think Truman was really, really strong. Jack Sinfield was quite decent as well. But yeah, credit to Warrington, and after the terrible year they had last year, it's a promising start.
Both sides were completing in the region of 90% too. So this is what I mean about it being a high quality game of football. It was 14-2 to Warrington at half time. I want to make mention of Mark Snade's kicking game, which I thought was excellent, and also for Warrington, to put that into some context, Wakefield had won the last 3 games between the two sides. Back to a team that's in trouble, Catalans. 6 tries for St. Helens against them, and 2 from Darryl Clark in his 350th match. Now, the scary thing for the Catalans is this game was only 6-0 at halftime, and it was on their own patch.
I only caught a bit of this because for some reason my Sky on demand wouldn't deliver me the replay, so I could catch up with it. But yeah, from what I've read and what I've seen, they just basically died off the last 30 minutes, didn't they? Like, they were quite competitive for 50 minutes, and then St. Helens just scored try after try, and that's really worrying at home after a terrible performance. I think Joel Tompkins is a very, very honest coach, and I think he was pretty scathing post-match, and that's 2 weeks in a row he's been scathing. Now, you're the coach, Lee, so you can tell better than me, but I don't think you can be that scathing week after week with your team, can you? Because eventually they switch off. So
I think if you've got a plan, and to the outside world, I've been through this a couple of times, to the outside world, the results and everything else looks like it's not happening. But if you know it's going to turn, your messaging needs to reflect that. And I think both with Luke Robinson and now with Tompkins, there's an element of, I've done all I can, but we're not doing it right. So once you start talking like that, you're starting to put blame on players, and that never ends well if it's done too much. And from Tompkins' honest assessments, which I love, by the way, but it won't work for many people in this modern world. Some people need a bit more encouragement. Some people need a bit more constructive feedback.
And I think with Huddersfield, there obviously some mitigations with their horrific injury count. I think Catalans are pretty much at full strength, and it's a fairly new group there. And Tompkins, I know he got the job midway through last year, but it's essentially his first year as a coach. He's not had a lot of experience.
No.
I don't think they even interviewed other candidates. They just gave him the job, and that's quite questionable. So whether he's at this stage of his career ready to lead a Super League team, I think is what we're going to find out in the near future. But that for me was a really worrying sign. Not that they got beat, but the fact that they kind of gave up. It
was 24-0 with 15 minutes to go, and they didn't score until the 70th minute. And they've been awful for the last 2 weeks now, and the only win they had was against Huddersfield. Yeah. So that's in a bit of context, if you ask me. They were so poor against Bradford, and the second half here, they were missing so many tackles. So
yeah,
it's plenty of work to do there. Over to Vegas, Hull KR.
Wow.
Got absolutely hammered by Leeds. 58-6, was it? I forgot to put the score down.
It was.
I think Leeds' game plan, get the ball early to Mike Acevo when it's a try.
Well, you said they got hammered in the game. Did they get hammered before the game? Because you kind of you see that scoreline and you sort of think, what was their prep? Look, I'll give them some credit. The fact they played the World Cup Challenge a week before, They were near perfect in that game. No one gave them a chance against the Broncos. They dominated the Broncos for 60 minutes. They got, and they had a few beers after that game, and it's very hard mentally to get up for such a. And then then you got to go to Vegas. Everything. Look, I don't know whether it got to their heads. I don't know, if it all went wrong, but the Leeds were red hot and Holgar were very, very poor. Like Sivo, look, we all know it's not like he's a secret weapon. Like he's not a new player, is he?
No.
Anyone who's watched him play, but he was just running over people. But the thing that was really bad for me was the last 4 minutes, Cooper Jenkins scored twice. So they didn't really respond. They just were quite soft throughout that full 80 minutes.
I think Mika Sivo's going to be a cult hero, a bit like Leslie Vanacolo. In Super League. Let's talk about Hull KR because you've mentioned them. I think their best performer was the Erasure dude before the game. It was 20. It was 20. Yeah, it was 24-0 by 28-0 by half time. And let's have a look at Hull KR. Let's analyse it. They've lost 2 from 2 Super League games now, and the World Club Challenge that was saved by the Hooter basically in Brisbane's Port Start. And their second halves are interesting too. So they conceded 13 points against York in round 1 in the second half. In the second half of the World Club Challenge, they conceded 20 and then conceded 58 in this game. So that's 101 points in 3 games at an average of 33, 34-ish. Like that. This is a team that last year, John, was so stingy in defence. They averaged 11 a game against.
Yeah, best defence in the comp, I think, wasn't it?
That's right. We've had some questions pertaining to Hull KR. I'll put them in now. Where have they gone? Okay. Will a World Club Challenge win see the NRL come calling for Willie Peters before the end of his current contract? And if he goes, can Rovers sustain their recent success without him?
Yeah, look, I think there was called, the Knights wanted to interview the job last year that went to Justin Holbrook. So there's already been NRL clubs in for him before they won the treble. And I don't think a big defeat in Vegas is going to change that. Look, yeah, there'll be clubs that come calling. Whether Willie sees out his contract or goes early, that's up to Willie. In terms of succession plan, that's really interesting because I think, look, they've got, you would say the 2 most important players, which is Litton and Lewis, are both in their mid to early 20s and a long-term deal. So I think they've got the core there. They've also got, Morg's relatively young. They've got sort of a good blend of experience and youth there. But in terms of the coaching, look, he's only just brought in 2 new assistants, and that's Ian Watson and Luke Gale. Now, Luke Gale's been retired a couple of years, relatively new in his coaching. Ian Watson's been coaching for a long time, had a lot of success at Salford, had made a Challenge Cup final his first year in Huddersfield, and then it went wrong and he got sacked at Huddersfield. So whether they see Watto as the next in line rank, I don't know. But yeah, I think it's always hard to replace a coach who's had a massive impact like that. But I think for Hull KR, it's very, very hard when you win a treble. Look at Wigan the year before, and they did the same thing. They won 4 trophies. Like, they made the grand final last year, but they didn't win a trophy last year. It's very hard to maintain that level of excellence.
Nothing fails like success, John. Nothing fails like success. Honestly.
In saying that, and I was messaging a mate who's a Hull KR fan. I was saying, well, you've lost the minor premiership already. And I was half joking, but they have dropped 4 points. And if you're Wigan and you're looking at that, they've won 3 from 3 and look red hot, you'll be like, well, that's great for us. But I still think Hull KR can bounce back and get to the grand final and maybe even win a grand final or a challenge.
Well, in the NRL, they'd put a line through them because they've conceded over 50 points in a game.
I did see someone put out a tweet saying there was at least 4 teams who had been beaten by 40 or 50, like St Helens in 2014 and Wigan in 2023 or whatever, and they'd all won the grand final that year. So there's not the equivalent NRL stat.
James McKee asked a question, different type of pressure that Hull KR are used to, and they don't seem to be handling it very well. Mikey seems to be well off the boil and believing in his own hype. That's Mikey Lewis. Look, I'll answer that one because I think it's a coaching one. Like I said, you laughed at my comment, but nothing fails like success. People lose their edge. So,
definitely.
So I was
just going to say, look at South Sydney in 2014.
Yeah, there's loads of examples, mate, and people lose their edge, and that's why winning back to back, or like Penrith did 4 on the trot, is a real achievement. And I mean, yesterday, watching Hull KR, they were chasing the tails. There was a lack of discipline in the play of the ball. They were giving away a lot on the right edge. They only had 35% of the ball by the 30-minute mark and only completed 6 sets. And so much of their game is geared towards completion and attrition, and they just weren't there at the races. Now, I think all it takes, I mean, I know you went to training and were impressed by what you saw.
Yeah, it was.
But it all depends how long they were just a little bit off prior to Christmas, for example. Right? Just a little bit cock-a-hoop. And there's other things that happen around a successful team too. More people want a piece of you. More sponsors, more media, more player requests, more people if you live in the town or city bumping into you in the street.
Did you see the videos that were leaked on social media about Mikey Lewis getting into a argument with a fan at a pub? So after the World Cup Challenge, I think it was that night or the next night, there was Mikey Lewis with a few angry words with a certain fan. Look, it was a bit of a storm in a teacup. There was no, bad words said or punches thrown or anything like that. But it seemed to be someone either trying to wind Mikey up or Mikey getting annoyed with someone at a pub. The point is, you have to be aware that these situations are going to happen because you're a target. And, people in the NRL know that because they are, in every pub or nightclub in, the Eastern Seaboard, basically. And the same as that happens in, other major sports. So they have to be aware of that. There's people who are going to try and take a shot at them. And Mikey has to be smarter to kind of not react or put himself in those situations. I'm not having a go at him, but because I don't know the full context of what happened before the recording or after that. But you've just got to be very careful.
Now, another real danger for KR is the Vegas hangover, so genuine jet lag issues and whatnot. And they've got Huddersfield next Sunday. So unlike the NRL teams, Super League teams have to back up next week. So imagine they don't get the result they need there. That would be a real issue. But it's also a great game potentially for them to get back into the groove. Back to Leeds, because... Sorry, go on.
Just to say, Lee, I mean... and I say this tongue-in-cheek, is there not a bigger leveler playing in Vegas in front of 40,000 people, part of a massive event, and then you're going away to Huddersfield, 5,000 fans?
If you're lucky.
That's a mental come-down that's hard to change.
Yeah, they should have sent them to a cup tie to Barrow or something. Let's talk about Leeds, because they were brilliant.
Yes.
They worked Hull KR laterally. When they were coming out of their own end, they worked them sideways. And it was all about unleashing their left side. And I was so impressed by the two halves, mate. Brodie Croft and a certain Jake Connor, who wasn't good enough for England.
Have you heard about this Jake Connor guy? He's, Man of Steel. Doesn't mean anything. Who even votes for it? I mean, you just, with every good performance that Jake Connor puts in, you just sort of think, why was he not picked for England?
I also think as well, their attack hasn't completely clicked yet. They were a bit clunky close to the line, if you remember it early on, but they still scored from these clunky passes. And they've scored 118 points in 3 games. That's almost 40 a game. And I know they lost to Lee, but they're looking the goods. And I can't wait to see them play Wigan.
Connor didn't play against Lee, which is important to remember. Right. And I don't think Sivo didn't play against Lee either. So, look, I think they're a team that's got points in them, and I think with Lockie Miller, who's a bit of a unpredictable player who likes to bounce around the field, Brodie Croft seems to be quite confident at the moment, really running the ball. You've got Connor who can, play past short, he can play wide. You've got big wingers. Ryan Hall and Sivo have got to be the biggest two wingers in Super League par.
Yeah.
And then, you've got some athletic centres. You've got some big forwards there. And you've got forwards who can also pass the ball like Cam Smith and Callum Watkins. I think Leeds were always going to be a top 3, top 4 team this year. And, they may finish top, they may finish second. We'll find out. But they were very, very good. And I think it was the... Leeds have never put that many points in Hull KR in Hull KR's 144-year history, so that kind of puts into context what kind of scoreline they dished.
Broncos fan said to me, "Geez, we must be in trouble then." On the subject of the big wings, did you know that statistically, tackle 2 is the most important? If you're going to have a good set, you need to really win the ruck on tackle 2 in attack, right. And likewise, conversely, you have to kill tackle 2. So having Micah Sivo and Ryan Hall on both their pick and swings is a big help for that on the kick return. So real good signs for Leeds, although I still have questions about their defence, but that's just me. Bulls 18 to lose 2 wins, 2 wins Olympique, are still 2 wins, 6. I thought Toulouse were very limited in attack. I ended up seeing the second half of this because I woke up and decided to get up and watch it. Halves weren't given a lot of direction. An Ethan Ryan hat-trick for Bradford, who had better go forward and move the ball at the right times for me. So, good signs for Bradford early on, who've got 2 wins... themselves against Catalans, and now another. And
they were very good against Hull as well. So look, I think Kurt Haggerty is a really top young coach, really promising. Ethan Ryan was electric. One of his tries was brilliant. Connor Wynn was really damaging. I really like Doro, the forward they brought in from Hull KR. Really big unit who can bend the line. And again, Bradford deserved the win. They're doing really well, Bradford, so full credit to them. Look, I think Toulouse will be disappointed. They just didn't really match their energy. As you said, I think their attack was a bit lackluster. There wasn't really much variety there. Bradford, very, very happy, and a good crowd there again. I think it was 8,000
or something.
Which, with no away fans, that's really strong.
I mean this in the nicest possible way. Odsal is also an attack on the rugby league senses, because you're at the ground and you go underground, right? You go into a bowl, right? The terraces are the same terraces that were there when they had the record crowd in 1934 or whatever it is. So that brings you back almost 100 years. The changing rooms are on the side away from what looks like the main stand. The field is surrounded by a track. The field is small, so the dimensions aren't the same. Against Catalans, the grass was like a farmer's field. This week it was nice. And when you're playing and you're trying to get your bearings, if the stand isn't where it should be, it's actually hard sometimes to play. It really is. And also on a smaller field with smaller in goals. And then where you think there should be a grandstand or a terrace, there's a big corporate area, and to the left of it, there's a car park with a nice little pathway going down to it. It is everything you don't expect at a rugby league ground, basically. So I think Bradford can really use that to their advantage.
Again, in saying that, Toulouse have been playing at Bradford in the championship for many years, so it should be a ground they're familiar with. But you are right, and I've said that on other episodes. Look, I think Kurt Haggerty's team can use it as an advantage, much like teams at Wakey used to at Bellevue before it got a makeover.
Now, another thing that came from this game was, unfortunately, refereeing. And the big thing about the refereeing in this game, and apparently it happened a couple of times over the weekend too, was the technology failing in the ear. Yeah. What's going on there?
I don't know, mate. It's not a good look. No. I mean, we had everything this week. We had earpieces failing. We had scoreboards disappearing, and even in the whole KR Leeds game, we didn't have the audio Obviously, there was no Sky team sort of in the studio in London doing a pregame, so we had the Fox League pregame. But then the audio dropped off for the first minute and a half. So we had the first minute and a half with no audio as well. So it wasn't a great weekend for stuff ups, should we say, or it was.
In terms of questions, we're just not going to get through every single one, so I've had to select some. And if you sent a question, I said I promised I'd use it, please just write back to me and I'll make sure your question or another question gets in next week. Richard Hardesty asked if there is a video ref at a game, if said video ref spots an infringement of the rules that the on-field ref misses, why is it not possible for said video ref to advise the ref that he missed said infringement? Because I get it's reviewed at the match review panel, but the team the infringement is against gets no benefit from the offending player missing 3 games after the fact.
I think they do have a quiet word at times, but I think also you don't want to kind of over officiate and micromanage everything.
And your earphones need to work.
Well, that helps. That does help, unless you've got ESP. That does help. Yeah.
Dawn Proctor asked, when a captain's challenge is inconclusive, why does a penalty still stand and not revert to a play on? Because she says you're penalising a team for something they may have not done, especially if you've seen it 7 or 8 times.
I think with a captain's challenge, it probably, if it's inconclusive, it goes back to the original ref's call, doesn't it?
The original decision, yeah.
Yeah, if he's called a penalty and it's inconclusive, then it's still a penalty.
So that, I think the idea of that, Dawn, is that the referee is still the boss, in a way.
Which always should be that way, really.
And if he's not comfortable, he sends it up, and if they decide they're not comfortable, they send it back to him and just say, go with your original decision. Graham Middleton asked, do you believe that clubs promoting their own academy players through their own pathway to first team rugby should be rewarded more by the IMG ratings and things like catchment area, screen pixels, etc.? Yeah,
I do like that. I think, to be honest, I don't necessarily think it should be rewarded by IMG criteria, because obviously Wigan, St Helens, Leeds have a natural advantage. But I think it should be rewarded on the salary cap.
I agree.
I think, there is a homegrown allowance, and there is a 10-year thing. But I think there probably should be more incentives to encourage clubs to develop their own players and invest in their own pathways. And you do that through the salary cap. So if you're Wigan and you've got 10 pathway through, players, maybe they only count 50 or 60 grand each on a cap or some figure, and then you can invest money in other areas. I think that's personally how I would do it, because there isn't enough clubs who are investing in pathways for mine. I don't know, it's a limited, because of participation levels not being great, there is a limited amount of players in that pool, but you've got to try and incentivize clubs to invest more in pathways for mine.
The next round 4, Thursday, Wakefield at home to Hull FC. I fancy Wakefield for that one, John.
Yeah, I fancy Wakefield. Wakefield have only won 1 from 3, which is not the start they would want, and Hull are in a bit of a hole. So I think probably Wakefield at home in a close one, personally.
For those who struggle with translation, he said Hull are in a bit of a hole. It actually sounded like you said Hull are in a bit of a hole. Friday, Lee Leopards versus Catalans Dragons. Oh. At the moment.
Yeah. Look, yeah, that's. I think probably Lee at home. But yeah, both teams. Yeah, I think Catalans are struggling more than Lee, but yeah, that was some fair mauling that Lee took. On Thursday. So yeah.
York Knights will fancy their chances against Warrington at home on Friday too.
Yeah, this might be the game that I'm going to go to. Look, I think probably Warrington, at least on paper. But look, York will fancy their chances, and look, they'll be a team high on confidence. They're doing really well. Another home game. Should be quite entertaining, and Warrington will be really out to, if they can be 3 from 3 the season, that's a fantastic start, and Sam Burgess, I'm sure, will have his boys fired up.
Toulouse might still be on 2 wins after hosting Wigan Warriors, but a tough trip for Wigan nonetheless.
Yeah, a tough trip, but I think Wigan they've been outstanding. Like, I know we're only in round 3, but what they averaging about 30 odd points per game. They're looking very good in both attack and defence. I think Wigan by probably at least 18, personally.
Okay. St Helens are at home to Bradford Bulls. That's a tough one for Bradford.
Yeah, look, I mean, St Helens, smashed Catalans and obviously got the win over Lee the week before, even though they got a few injuries. And we've not really talked about Lee. I can't remember if it was on the run sheet or not, that statement that they sent out about the John Wilkham comments. Look, I think that was much like the Lee one. That was just like bizarre.
Can you go into that for people who didn't see it? Well, so John Wilkinson made some scathing comments on Sky about the way they treat players
and the way they treat Paul Wellens. Yeah. Now, basically, St Helens put out a statement saying they reserved the right, and they were appalled by Wilkins' comments. But look, I think the fact is, he's a pundit. He's there to give his opinion.
He's also an ex-player who cares about St Helens.
He's a St Helens legend, and I think he's good friends with Paul Wellens. He may be good friends with Mark Percival, I don't know. But look, my understanding, what I've heard, is that the Percival situation is a bit of a nightmare. And the allegations are there that he was offered a contract and agreed to it, and then the contract was pulled, and now he's going to leave the club. The Wellens thing was also, there was all the talk that he was out earlier in the season, that Paul Rowley was going to come in. And then the talk was that if he got to the grand final, he'd be given a new contract. He obviously didn't get to the grand final, and he was out. But look, I think he was probably poorly treated by the club as well. But the whole statement, what was the point of the statement? They're having a go at Wilkin publicly. They're having a go at Sky, while we're an employee of Sky, while we're negotiating for a new Sky TV deal. Like, what? They're not going to sue him because I don't think legally they have a leg to stand on. What he said wasn't defamatory, and it was also, it's fair comment. It's kind of protected under the honest opinion defence. So it just makes them look bad. So I really don't know with that club what they think they're doing or how they think they're perceived, because it just make them look bad, not anyone else.
On Sunday, because these two of the teams played in Vegas, Hull KR and Leeds, the Battle of the Cellar Dwellers on Sunday at Huddersfield and Hull KR. Look,
I think Hull KR probably, dip into their squad and try and rotate a few players, but I think I'd still back Hull KR.
It's going to be tough for them. They're going to be...
Yeah, there's a mental hangover of all that travel and the high point. But I still think they've got enough to get over Huddersfield now, and I think they need to for their own well-being.
It'll be squeaky bum time if they don't. Yeah. And then Leeds host Castleford.
Yeah, that's an interesting local derby. Leeds will obviously be on a high. Cass, first win of the season, good win over Huddersfield. I still think probably Leeds, but look, I think Cass have been competitive in every game, even though they've only won the one game. They were competitive against Wigan, and they were competitive against Toulouse. And they had a nightmare, I'm not sure if you saw it, but they had a nightmare trip to Toulouse and back. It was something like 13 hours one way and 13 hours the way back. I think they went via Munich and all sorts of things, but it won't be too far for them to go up the road to Headingley if that's where it is, if it's not a home game. And I think maybe Leeds in a tight one, but could be a 50-50 game.
And the NRL starts next weekend too.
It started today, didn't it?
Well, yeah, but it starts in Australia. Melbourne Storm versus the Eels is the first game on the Thursday.
A nice one, the Lomax derby.
Yeah, and another game to look out for is Broncos and
Penrith.
Panthers, yeah. But in terms of results, the Cowboys lost to Newcastle. Newcastle were wooden spooners last year, coached by Justin Holbrook, got the win against Todd Payton's Cowboys, and I think already some people are already thinking that Todd Payton will be under a bit more pressure and would have had a sleepless night in his last night in Vegas.
Well, that was the that was the St Helens derby, wasn't it? Because you had former St Helens grand final winning coach Justin Holbrook up against the Cowboys with the assistant coach of Paul Wellens. But no, I watched that game and I was really impressed by the Knights. I thought Ponga and Brown worked well, and I like had a bit to do with Holbrook when he was in the England. Really nice guy. I think he's a top coach. I think he did well with Titans. So good to see the Knights get up.
Bulldogs and St George was a golden point win for the Bulldogs. Geez, that was a slugfest for most of the game.
It was, and I thought the Dragons were unlucky in that. I thought they were really, really gritty. And look, they've had a bad couple of years, but if they can keep up that kind of level performance every week, they'll do well this year. But yeah, Doggies will be very happy with that one. And it was a thrilling end, wasn't it, to the Vegas weekend?
That's almost us, John. Look out for my analysis video this week. I'm looking at Lee Leopards and Warrington Wolves defensive patterns, and I'm doing that from the earlier rounds, to be fair to all the other teams that are covered. So please look out for that on the Rugby League Coach YouTube channel. You can also get me rugbyleaguecoach.com.au, admin at rugbyleaguecoach.com.au is the email, and at Rugby League Coach on socials. Johnny?
You can get the non-Scottish, non-Tourette's John Davidson at X and Johnny D. Davidson, and at Facebook at John Davidson Journalist. And yeah, obviously, all your apologies about anything, war in Iran, famine, hunger, anything else. Rolf Harris, apparently I need to apologise for that.
Right.
And everything else. Keep those apologies and claims coming.
Just make our podcast bigger.
Yeah.
See you later in the week. We're going to do an After the Hooter sometime this week, but we've not decided which one yet. So that will be after Thursday's game or Friday's game, but I'll let you know on the Rugby League Coach socials, and I'm sure Johnny will let you know on his socials too. So cool. Sure, we'll speak to people soon.